Hello and welcome everyone who is listening in to this fifth session today in the context of this wonderful event. I gather that you've all had interesting sessions so far with a lot of information. We're up now for the next 45 minutes to talk about how to achieve the EU's climate neutrality by 2050. So please allow me to introduce myself to get the session started. My name is Juliane. I'm the managing director and founder of FORIMPACT. We are a think tank and boutique consultancy for transformation processes. It is our task to develop individual strategies, to communicate them, and support family-owned businesses and municipalities to implement them. In this context, the energy sector is one of our busiest fields of engagement, and we're therefore delighted to have been invited to curate and moderate the following panel. So let's get right into it. Climate neutrality by 2050 means achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions for the EU countries as a whole, mainly by cutting emissions and investing in green technologies and protecting the natural environment. So the EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050, which means an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions, as I said. This objective is at the heart of the European Green Deal and is a legally binding target thanks to the European climate law. The EU can lead the way by investing in technological solutions, empowering citizens, and ensuring action to support a smooth and just transition in key areas such as industrial policy, finance, and research. The pursuit of climate neutrality is also in line with the EU's commitment to global climate action under the Paris Agreement, and the EU submitted its long-term strategy to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and Humanity. So far, the surrounding setting, biomethane, which is the topic of our discussion, is just as an introductory definition, the purified version of biogas produced from the breakdown of organic matter, and it is one of the main renewable gases of the future and available today to help decarbonize the EU's energy system. Therefore, we're obviously going to debate this with three experts that are alongside myself on this panel, and we want to look at how a sustainable alternative to fossil gas, which can be stored, distributed, and used according to demand, biomethane can play a significant role towards achieving the EU's clean energy objectives. It can also be used to further diversify the EU's gas supplies, phasing out Europe's dependency on Russian fossil fuels and reducing the exposure of consumers to volatile natural gas prices. So for these reasons, there's a clear need to scale up biomethane by 2030, as outlined in the Repower EU plan of the 18th of May 2022. As a renewable and dispatchable energy source, increasing the production and the use of biomethane also helps to address the climate crisis. The EU's biomethane production, either as biogas or its upgraded version, needs to reach 35 billion cubic meters per year by 2030, and the estimated investment need for the period amounts to 37 billion euros. That is quite a lot. So in this context, we decided to bring to the table Devlin, who is advisor at the European Commission on the topic, has worked in the DG Energy for a long time on the topic of biomethane as an expert on the developments. Welcome. We have Professor Dr. Riemenschneider-Greif, who's Managing Director at LUCRESTA Clean Energy, which I will not present further now because we will learn about LUCRESTA later on in more detail what exactly the company does. And last but not least, Ronald, who's investor at Pfennings Mobility. Welcome as well. We're curious to hear how your company has gone through a transition, and as an investor, you look at new opportunities that are currently on the market. So let's discuss with our panelists which plans the EU has in for this context, and which technologies also already exist, and how investors then are already pushing this development. So welcome to the three of you. I will hand over the beacon to Brendan in just a second. For those who are listening in, our plan is to listen to what the EU has planned and how the regulation is set up at the moment and how it has come about from Brendan. We will then learn from Frank where the technology stands and what solutions are already available and how long it might take for them to be up and running and what exactly it might take in investment terms for that to happen. And in that context, obviously, we want to learn from Ronald how that is already on the run. So without further ado, Brendan, welcome to you. I'm handing over to learn more about how this has come about and on the European legislative level.
Well, thank you very much, Juliane. The European Union is on a steep route towards decarbonisation by 2050. We have to move very quickly to find all alternatives to traditional hydrocarbons that come out of the ground. We are looking for new opportunities to develop renewable sources, and amongst those, all of those opportunities, biomethane is one of the most encouraging. We already have 18 billion cubic meters of biogas being produced in the European Union today. 80% of that goes to electricity and heat, and the remaining 20% is upgraded into biomethane and injected into the grid. That second number, 20%, which is upgraded into biomethane and injected into the grid, that has to increase exponentially by 2030. And the European Commission is underwriting that work in both policy terms and in the future will be actively supporting that figure to be increased. We are imagining that we will reach 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane production by 2030. That is in addition to what we have already now. And the estimated investment need, as you mentioned, is about 37 billion euros for that. It's a very difficult target, I have to say. Years ago, I worked on a pipeline project to bring natural gas from Azerbaijan to the European Union. It took us 14 years to build a 10 BCM pipeline from Azerbaijan through Georgia, through Turkey, through Southeast Europe, which was not part of the European Union when we started, to the European Union. That project, which I remember as being one of the most difficult that I ever had to participate, that seems easy in comparison to what you have to do in biomethane by 2030. The good news is that all of the legislation and targeting and finance is probably out there if we can only bring it together into one big package. Now, as I understand it, from the type of projects that we're talking about here for biomethane, we do not need a huge number of point sources of biomethane to be injected into the network in order to meet our target of 35 billion cubic meters of gas. I'll let my colleagues who are more technically advanced to give you a view on how many of their Anlagen are needed for the 35 billion cubic meters that we need by 2030, but it isn't a huge number. In the context of Germany, in the context of France and Italy, the biggest economies in the European Union, I can see that there is a huge need for this type of technology that we're talking about today to be rolled out at speed and with positive support from authorities. So I think that what we need to do here is think about scale. It's not a question of talking about one investment opportunity or two investment opportunities. We're talking 500, 700 identical investment opportunities bundled up and put together. From the European Commission's perspective, we have seen the power of joint action, joint purchase, joint sales. And if there was to be a claim from industry, from financial institutions that could deliver the target by 2030 using a simplified aggregation model, that would be very, very welcome. And if we could distribute the biogas production across the European Union, or even concentrate it in one member state, potentially, and bring it up to speed very, very quickly, that is something that would be welcomed by the European Commission and by my colleagues in the Energy Platform Task Force. As you know, I'm sure, we have to replace all Russian hydrocarbons by 2027. That's all the natural gas that has previously come from the Russian Federation to the European Union has to be replaced. And biomethane and the technologies we're talking about today have that role. If we can find scale, we will find success. So my message to you on behalf of the European Commission is think big, think how you can work with the European Union as a whole and come to us with a very ambitious and effective rollout of biomethane under the next college of Mrs. von der Leyen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brendan. A very motivating introduction to this panel discussion. Who is to say that there is even one entrepreneur on earth that would not look for scales in a business case? So I think we're well aligned on that topic. And thank you for pointing out the numbers as well, particularly on the topic of what kind of scale we need to reach through the technology. And I think this is a very good bridge to hand over to you, Frank, to give us an insight on how exactly does the technology work that you have developed at LUCRESTA? What is it all about in general? What is the USP of your business? And how do you put into context the surrounding situation that Brendan described on the European level, and what impact might that also have on your invention?
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of the global community today to advance the sustainability transformation of our economy. And I am one of the managing directors and shareholders of the LUCRESTA Group. Based on our unique innovation, we had the goal to construct, operate, and plan 50 plants within the next 5 years. But I just learned a minute ago from Brendan that we should think big, and to reach his aim, we need 700 from our plans to fulfill the aim of the European Union. At the moment, currently, we are planning 4 plants, each with 60 megawatt, which is our standard plan. But how did we get there? Our guiding principle in the company is learning from nature. And I always say, somewhat sarcastically, that the worst invention of mankind is waste. Nature doesn't know waste. And we have to learn to think in cycles like nature, which has led to the development of circular economy and trade models such as cradle to cradle. Our inventor took a look at nature too, to see how substances containing crude fiber, which consist of long chain carbon components, are fermented and which microorganisms are doing this. We asked ourselves the questions: how is lignocellulosic biomass fermented in nature? How does it work? What is the biological process takes place? Which cultures are doing this? And what is the best environment for this process? The result is a new technology, different cultures and microorganisms, no relevant waste, and in average, more than 60% biogas yield. The inventor of the technology then trained these microorganisms over many years to ferment as much raw fiber-rich biomass waste, so as much different substrates as possible. So our plant is multi-feedstock capable. We can use, for example, the fermentation residues from conventional biogas plants to feed our biomethane plant. We considered what technical processes we could use to support, to help our microorganisms. Then he applied for patents for these technical solutions, which we incorporated into LUCRESTA. After 30 years of research and development, we have now developed the 6th generation of our main fermenter. Our standard plant has a capacity of 60 megawatt. Furthermore, it requires no fresh water for the production process and produces no wastewater. The plants are designed to be completely energy self-sufficient. To sum up, we have 3 main unique selling points. A very unique microorganism environment developed over many years. A multi-stage production system featuring a mesophilic main fermenter and several pre-treatment stages, and a thermophilic secondary fermenter. So, Brenton says, when can we install it? The first plant based on this innovative digester principle was up and running in 1998. So our main fermenter is hydraulically mixed and has no moving part in normal operations. As a result, the main fermenter has been running continuously for 26 years. It has never been open for maintenance, and all upstream and downstream processes are redundant. The LUCRESTA process today represents an advanced evolution of existing biogas production technologies, forming a symbiotic utilization system for biogenic waste. It's important to say that we only use biomass waste for our energy production. It can utilize residual materials from conventional biogas plants, resulting in a significantly higher gas yield from raw fiber-rich input materials. This increased efficiency contributes perfectly to the growth of renewable energy production. The performance of the technology is verified by experts from independent companies. As a result, given the low maintenance nature of our plants, achieved via innovative mechanical solutions, and a higher biogas yield from our unique cultures, LUCRESTA's technology is ideally suited to the construction of projects with a larger capacity. From a practical and economical perspective, allowing to tackle the energy transition challenges significantly more efficient and at an accelerated pace. This technology enables a much quicker attainment of the goals set by the European Union with 700 plants, and we are ready to go for it. How long does it need to have it run, set it up and running? The building time of a plant is around 1 year to 15 months. The administration process to get the application ready, circa the same time. So when we can shorten that time, that would be a significant step into faster realization of sustainable goals. Thank you for your attention. Looking forward for the questions.
Thank you, Frank. Well, so before we go over to Ronald and learn about the transition that you've had at your company, maybe to interlink between what Brendan said and what you've just talked about, Frank, is the common ground, the comment you made on cradle to cradle, the design concept being the basis of the Green Deal. It goes to show that there is a decision that has been taken on the European level, but the national level is struggling to catch up with the aims that have been set on European level. Namely, for instance, what you're saying, Frank, that waste is actually somebody else's treasure in that case, and everybody's energy in yours. So how would you say, can you work on the national level with the normations that we have, that waste is not to be used in different ways? Could the European Union help on that level and push legislation on the national level a bit further, and normalizing the use of waste for these kind of purposes, or do you find the regulative surrounding and setting to be good as it is for the purposes of your business?
Of course, the framework could be better, but especially in Germany, the European Union here playing a very significant and very good role. So that we are planning projects at the moment in Spain, and we are glad that we have like a European-wide opening of the grid, which was a very good step into to realize our targets. So we're not only concentrating in Germany, but going where the substrates are, where the biomass waste is. So from that perspective, the European Union really helped us a lot in that case. Of course, the regulations could be easier. There could be clearer criteria, and the biomethane market at the moment is quite struggling because of some fake CO2 certificates. So, of course, this is leading that a megawatt biomethane was costing in November 22 390 euros. And at the moment is 125 euros. So that's nearly 1/3. That's, I mean, really a struggle to invest and to finance the project.
Well, you're helping me a lot on the moderation here, because that being a struggle of finance and investment, Brendan, you said it's all about scale. Ronald, if you listen to the both of them, one saying we have the market that we want to establish for this, we have the legislative setting that we're getting ready because we need biomethane to give the stability and the providing of an energy source that's also renewable but also independent. And then on the other side, Frank, who says, well, we have the technology, we can get going as an investor. Is that not the ideal scenario?
Yeah, it looks like, because the economic scales are very good, and we are now have some government issues to solve in this. We are in Germany, and we have some very special issues to solve before we can build such a plant like this. And this might be our greatest problem in this moment.
On the national level, okay. But that being said, and considering that the company that you hail from grew and was very successful in Germany in a different sector, maybe you want to give us an insight from where that company comes from, what they do, and why they decided to transition to this field of expertise.
Yeah, the main reason is we have to change, because we have the EU things that are related to the climate change, and we have to make something other than in the past. Formerly, we are only a petrol station company. We have we started in the 2000s with 50 stations. And the first what we have to do is to grow up, because we are too small to stay alive. Yeah, that's the market is very compressed in the past, in the last years. So the family office and me as a partner of this, I'm a co-investor of the Pfennings company. Are growing up and make acquisitions since 20 to growing up, and now we have 130 petrol stations, but that's not the technology for the futures. We only have oil, and oil is not the thing we want to have in the future. So we think about what we can do, and the first what we can do is to change fossil-based fuel to others. And first, what we do is to change the fossil diesel to GTL, gas to liquid, or HVO 100. We're doing it since 2019. And at the same time, we begin to start to develop petrol stations with other products like hydrogen. We have one hydrogen plant or one hydrogen refilling station in Oldenburg near Bremen, and we are very happy that we have a second one in 2022 nearby Bremen. So the hydrogen, that's our hydrogen part, but somebody else are not sure that hydrogen is the solution for the transport in the future. So we have something else to do. That's not all. And our rolling up in the future is to go to a vertical diversification. Yeah, but we are not sure that we have the materials that we need to handle or to trade. So we have now Fred, our main owner, find Frank in a network, and they are decide to found the LUCRESTA because it's a good way to make sustainability in the energy market, and because we have to work to make action now, not in the future. All the other techniques are for the future, not for now. Nobody in our main business is the mobility, and the mobility can't work with the techniques they are developed in other parts. So we have to do more because we have not the time to wait.
Yeah.
Therefore,
so what you're alluding to is that there are also different kinds of fuels that can obviously be developed out of the resource that LUCRESTA would be producing. And certainly there's a market that is coinciding with your original business, but you also describe a very strong transition that your business has gone through, particularly due to obviously the climate change legislation that has been put in place on the EU, but also national level. So it is not just a case of having sustainability at one's heart and wanting, to protect the planet for the better cause, which is certainly at the heart of everyone, but it's also an economic case that makes sense, which is very decisive, obviously, on investor sides, and deciding whether or not private or institutional investors would follow up with a business idea. But maybe on that end, when that investment in LUCRESTA was done or is being set up at the moment, and you're talking about four plans, Frank, that you've mentioned earlier, we heard from Brendan that there's a scale that is to be reached. How do you feel prospectively? And I'm going to dive right into it about franchising out your business model, because we need to reach scales quickly. From what I gather, Brendan, correct me. Is a franchise model something that you would take into consideration? Question one, and question two to Brendan. Should there be such a franchise, would that be something that the European Union would support in ways that are available to them?
Yeah. Okay. I agree with the first one. Yeah.
You or me?
Yeah. Okay. But we are investing only a small part of the thing. We are developing the techniques, and we are very, very fond of franchise relationship with others. Yeah, because we can't build such as much as these plans that we need. So it's only the first part. When you heard what we came from, you have an idea what's our potential of investment is. It's not so much. So we have the technique, and we have some models, and I give the big micro to Frank to describe this a little bit.
So Juliane, a wonderful question. Well, on the technical side, we built up a network with big engineering, international big engineering companies to be scalable. So we could realize, like one partner has 950 engineers, worked until now in building and renewing oil refineries, which is not a big business anymore. So they're ready to ready and up for us to build plants. Our plant is totally standardized and modelized, and from this perspective on, yes, we are ready for a scalable process. As I said, we are building planning 1 in Spain and 3 in Germany at the moment. For next year, our plan is to realize another 10. But as after hearing Brandon, yes, we have to think bigger, and we thought we think big already. So yeah, there's something else to do.
But the first ones are the most difficult. Yeah, now we
obviously
the second year it's easier to do so because we have some.
Well, you're piloting a very new setup, and obviously with every startup, at least what I can add to that illustrious round, it takes at least 3 years to be up and running. But Brendan, maybe to hand over that question to you, I mentioned the possibility of franchising the business model that LUCRESTA is developing, and obviously with the aim of scaling it. What from the European Union's perspective, what is your tool basically to support that kind of scaling? I mean, the Financial Times recently featured that the EU has a plan for buying big key commodities. They criticize it might be centrally overreach. Where do you put that into the context? Is what opportunities are there even for the European Union to navigate to support the scaling up? Because obviously private funds might not be enough because the risk is very big. How can you ensure the market and the actors that there is a prospect off-taker?
Well, this type of question is a very old question in the European energy markets. In the 1980s, when I first started working, without telling you how old I am, but in the 1980s, we had the European Union, or at least 6 or 7 states, so Germany, the Netherlands, France, a couple of others, who gave a guarantee to Norway to underwrite all of the investments necessary to bring gas from Norway to the European Union. That type of guarantee was effectively an income guarantee. So in the event that Germany, for example, could not absorb the gas, then there was a guarantee behind the German companies from the government saying, we will stand in for those companies. That type of offtake guarantee can be organized for large infrastructure developments. The interesting thing about this specific infrastructure here is that you have diverse and geographically diverse points of production. I think the issue here on scale is that too few points of production would not be sufficient to engage the interests of the European Union in order to find a solution. So 5, 6, 20, something like that, it's interesting, but it's not something that would create European Union interest. Something that would, for example, deliver a substantial amount of the 35 billion cubic meters that is necessary by 2030 could create the opportunity for a specific regime which would deliver that volume. And one can imagine that there are, within the joint purchase platform, options for that. There are also bespoke legal arrangements that can be developed for such a project. So, for example, the pipeline project that I mentioned at the beginning from Azerbaijan to the European Union, that resulted in an international treaty signed by 9 countries, I think, and then another one signed by 5 countries, guaranteeing the income for the infrastructure over a period of 30 years with a minimum internal rate of return of 13%. So such a large infrastructure for a renewable project is feasible. It's just that no one has ever asked for it, because most renewables are small scale and distributed, and the companies behind them are not necessarily the type of companies that in the past would have asked for these arrangements. I'm thinking of big oil companies, effectively. But financial companies are able to ask for these things. And particularly if there is a strong European Union angle to a project. So to meet 35 billion cubic meters of gas, you need 700 installations, if I understand correctly, of your type. But let's imagine that 50 of them are in Germany and the others are distributed across the European Union. And even if you only supplied half the number, so 350, or even 1/3 of the number, I think that would be a substantial contribution to the 2030 target. But you would need to find the financial institutions and the imaginative process that would deliver a substantial amount of the biomethane requirements of the European Union. And then you could get into a discussion about how can you do this in a way that is very specific to the companies and the technology involved. And that is something that the European Union in the past, or the European Commission, should I say more precisely, the European Commission has in the past said and done. So we have done it for pipelines. We did them in North Africa, Norway, Azerbaijan. We've done them for electricity in the North Sea, but we have not done them for biomethane, as far as I'm aware. But it is a feasible option with a large financial contribution and a large pan-European opportunity. That sort of thing can be done. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much. While Frank is calculating in his mind how many plants and on which soil in which European countries need to be constructed to reach that considerable amount that needs to be provided for such a project, I'll ask you in a minute about that, Frank. I have a follow-up question for you, Brendan, that came from the audience. They're asking, what specific initiatives does the EU intend to implement for the stimulation of investment into the biomethane space? The targets to increase production exponentially are clear, but what levers do you intend to pull in order to reach those targets? You've mentioned a couple of them just a minute ago. And Frank mentioned speeding up administrative process. Is this something you are looking into? Are there subsidized debt schemes coming up and insurance products that could protect private investors? There's a long list of questions for you.
Well, I hope I get all the questions there. On the procedures, I think Ronald mentioned it was 1 year of procedures and then 1 year to build it. I understand that the procedures are being looked at, but I can't tell you any details because we do not at the moment have a European Commission. I mean, we have the old one, but not the new one. So I don't know what the new one is going to decide, and it would be wrong for me to even speculate. I do know they are looking at it though, and how to make it simpler to get all the procedures in place. On on pan-European Union level, all I can say is that we're looking at big projects and looking for ways to support them in the types of ways that I just mentioned. What type of support, legal regimes, financial guarantees, joint purchasing, all of these things. But it has to be, again, a project which is of sufficient scale to warrant the European Union or the European Commission to create something very, very specific for an industry or for a sector. It also can't, and let me be clear about this, it cannot be tailored specifically to any one company or any one technology, although companies and technologies can ask the Commission for support. We will not create a support framework for you, but you can ask for support, and if it's politically correct to do so, then you will get that support. So I think that's pretty much answered the questions. Financial support there is, as a moment, as far as I know, none. But at the European Union level, but there is at the national level.
So maybe something for the European Investment Bank to look at. And also we had the question on insurance products that could protect private investors. That would also probably be something for the next Commission. Is that correct?
That's interesting because in the European Union is not existing such a insurance. We found one in America, which is insuring such things, and perhaps we could learn from that insurance company a little bit for the European market too. And perhaps, Brandon, with a little bit of help of the European Union, we could engage European insurance companies to build the same product.
Quite possibly. I don't know the specifics of these types of insurance projects. The type of insurance that we offer in the European Union is through regulated asset bases and guaranteed offtake agreements. But that is more than enough, generally speaking. If you're talking about political risk, there are specific things which can be done, but they are, as I say, only for political risk, not regulatory risk normally.
So what we've learned looking at the time in this round is that investors are certainly prepared to support the scale up of this form of renewable energy, that the legislative context is very open to cooperate and create a setup that is favorable for the private sector to cooperate with the public sector on the scale up, considering that they think large. And this brings me to my last question for this round. We only have 2 more minutes left, and we obviously want to stay in the time frame. Frank, have you calculated, I'm going to be the bingo lady of the session, have you got the numbers for me? How many plants would we then need to fulfill what Brendan has?
Well, that's easy. If we need 700 to fulfill the 35 billion cubic meters, we need 350 to go ahead with what Brendan asked us to do. So let me sleep one night over this because it's 7 times what my ambitious goal was before today. And then I would like to answer your question tomorrow.
Well, that sounds like a good plan. A 7-fold target of what we started off 45 minutes ago. That's what I call scaling up in the space of 45 minutes. At least the effort is definitely there. And we look forward to all investors that might have questions on the topic and want to get back to us and find out more about the technology. Please feel free to contact the organization and we will be in touch. I would like to say thank you to Brendan for taking the time and giving us an overview on the legislative situation in Brussels, sending all the best over to Belgium. And thank you to you, Frank and Ronald, giving us insights on your brave push toward ensuring our independence and the provision of renewable energies in respect of biomethane. Next up, I am allowed to introduce Dariusz Malecki, who will be taking care of what we call the wrap-ups of this wonderful event. It's been a pleasure being part of this. Dariusz, thank you so much. And hands over to you for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Juliane. And indeed, it was a very interesting day and a very exciting day, especially for us at Inglosus Foundation, bringing so many interesting parties together. I had the pleasure to moderate the session too this morning. I wasn't that white at that time, but the sun is shining right in my face, so that's why I'm a little bit illuminated. I hope you don't mind. We started this morning with very high-level keynote speeches, traveled then through the growth of the EU and what it means for its neighbors, talked about the European Capital Markets Union, what we could learn from it, and could there be a same model for the MENA region. Then we spoke about regional energy possibilities and as well how the transition can actually be funded, concluded by a panel on the topic how the EU's climate neutrality can be achieved by 2050. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, the Sustainable Global Capital is coming to an end. We would like to thank not only, of course, our long-lasting partner, DZ Bank, who we have built this great network with, but especially to the speakers and all the members of the Sustainable Global Capital community. Because without a strong, long-lasting community in financial markets, we will not be able to overcome the most important challenges of our future. Three main aspects that have stayed in my mind throughout the day are the topic of standardization or harmonization, literacy, and especially the topic of cooperation. We have plenty of programs in space. We have plenty of very interesting initiatives that have been set by all regulatory authorities all around the world. We have great minds and we have great personnel. What we should be focusing on is how do we get standardization and harmonization on the tracks, and especially how can we, and especially in a very harsh political landscape, how can we drive cooperation in the future between our neighboring countries for one specific goal, which is driving the transition, driving future cooperation, and closing all necessary funding gaps that we have in place. With these words, I conclude the Sustainable Global Capital of 2024. I thank everyone who took the time to watch our live stream. Thank you to the great audience asking so many interesting questions, and especially stay in touch with us, stay in touch with our organization, and stay in touch with the Sustainable Global Capital community. I wish you all the best, a great afternoon. Thank you so much for your participation.